kind of like you were alluding to, my childhood formed that. My dad died when I was 2. So I was raised by a single mom. And I think that definitely shaped me and formed me in many ways. But I think because of my childhood and some things that I went through, my mess kind of became my message, because I started using sugar at a young age. I can remember being probably 7 or 8 and hiding sweets in my bedroom and getting mice in the house. They were eating my sweets and they pooped on the bed, and I got in trouble for that. So that was my coping mechanism, even as a young child, was going towards the sugar and the food to kind of comfort and self-soothe. And so once I worked through like what caused that and the why behind the why that I was doing that, and found freedom, I really wanted to help other women find that freedom, because I know that other women are stuck and they're doing the same thing, but we just don't talk about it.
Absolutely. And since you mentioned that you went through this as a young child, was there any concerns like with weight, or was it just like a sweet tooth?
It was all of the above. I have been all over the spectrum. So when I was younger, I was overweight. And then I went through high school and didn't think I was thin enough, so didn't eat. And then later, after college, I would say I got into binging to kind of stuff and not work through some of the things that had happened in my life that needed to be addressed. I was just pushing them down. So I've always had a very interesting relationship with food.
I know sometimes some people will say that there's a number of us who eat our problems away, right? They'll, if they have a hard day, if they have like a fight with their partner, they'll turn to food, and it's comforting because the food doesn't judge, right? The food, and you know what? I love sushi. Food is such a comforting creation, right? You mentioned that you had some difficulty in your childhood because your father passed and your mother and you were raised by a single mother. Was food at that age an escape for you?
I think it was. I think I used it to soothe. And I think looking back, my mother did the same thing. So it definitely was a learned behavior. I have memories of going to my grandparents' house, and the first thing she would do when she'd get in the door was make a beeline for their cookie drawer. And she would always grab 2 or 3 cookies. And then, of course, she'd give me 2 or 3 cookies. And so it kind of just became this, I don't know if it was a way of bonding. I don't know if it was, I don't know what it was, but there's definitely something to that.
And how did you break that cycle at such a young age? Or did you realize it as you got older?
As I got older, it was, I mean, this has been with me more. I mean, I've been more towards the sweets and the sugar than I haven't been, to be honest with you. Because it was about 7 years ago now that I think that I broke free, and I was like, no, I don't want to do this anymore.
And what did you do when you realized that you broke free? Did you like throw a big party, or did you just jump in the air and you said, "Yes, I
That's
am
pretty
free
much
of
what I did.
this"?
And I took a picture.
I got to see that picture now.
Yep, I'll send it to you.
I look forward to it. So you touched on like mothers and you're helping them. What's some of the difficulties that you find with motherhood that maybe some mothers don't necessarily want to talk about?
I think it is the hardest job on the earth. And I don't feel like there's a lot of training for it, to be honest with you. I feel like so many of us know what we came from and where we came from. And we either want to recreate that or we don't. And regardless of if we do or we don't, if we don't want to recreate that, how do we learn a new way? How do we retrain everything that we knew? Because those habits and those patterns and that conditioning is so ingrained in us that you really need almost like an intensive on to reparent yourself and your family differently than the way that you were raised. And there just, I don't think, are a lot of resources out there for people that want to do it differently.
Yeah, I look at the, well, when we could go to the bookstore on a regular
Right.
basis, I look at that. And when it comes to parenting, I think the two biggest aisles in bookstores are parenting and sexual situations, I guess I can call them, right? So I look at the parenting aisle and there's books upon books upon books on how to be a better father, be a better mother, be a better step parents or whatever the case is. And even though I don't have children, I just I have a dog, and I remember the research I went into just to learn how to, train a dog and grow them and everything. It's similar, but definitely not the same. No disrespect to dog owners, but there is a difference between having a child and having a dog. But no matter how much you read, in my experience, you still have to go out there and do the job, because if you rely solely on the books, there's a lot of information out there and it could be overwhelming, right?
Absolutely.
You have two children and you can say, I want to raise my children to be this. And let's say you're one of those people that you're well read and you go grab 10 books. It's 10 books, 10 different authors, 10 different perspectives, 10 different types of children, and they may not be yours. Like, how do
Yes.
you tell a parent, how do you tell a new parent, okay, you know what? Here's the guideline. Like, what do you tell them at that point when they've just become a new parent and they're dealing with some of the issues that maybe you dealt with and trying to break free?
Gosh, I think the biggest thing, if I could go back, would be that one size doesn't fit all. And I think it's kind of what you alluded to with the books, is I think we live in such a society that we want what worked for one person to work for everybody else. And we almost want this blueprint of how to do it. And it's just like you said, like your children might be different than my children, but you've written this book. And while you and I might be the same, our kids might be totally different. And so I think a lot of it is there's just so many different circumstances and situations, and it's not a one size fits all thing. So I think to be curious and give yourself grace and just know that you're learning as you go is probably the best advice, because it's there's no guidebook. And if you're a type A like me and you want to know how to do it, it's kind of hard.
What's some of the lessons that you've learned along the way in your journey throughout motherhood?
I think to let go of expectations, that's been a really big one. Because I would find myself, finding I would have an expectation of this is how something would go, and it wouldn't go that way. And then I would get disappointed or upset or mad, and just kind of, I let my unmet expectation kind of put a sour taste on the whole thing, which is really unfortunate because there's so much good in those moments. And I think just because you have a bad moment doesn't make you a bad parent.
Are these these expectations that maybe you created for yourself because you wanted motherhood to go a certain way, or is it born out of experience?
Oh no, it was all about having that picture, the white picket fence, the 2.5 kids, the dog, everybody, like girls in hair bows, like all the things.
I remember I made a joke that when if one of my friends asked me if I ever get married, I told them, of course, I want the white picket fence, I want the 2.5 kids, I want the dog named Sparky, and I want the car that I will be fixing until I retire in the garage. I want it all. And they turned to me, they said, you actually want 2.5 kids? I was like, yeah. Either I want, I told them I don't want literally half a child.
Right?
Right? It's American dream, right?
Yes,
That's what you
yes.
want. And, and you walk outside and you do your little wave to your, to your neighbors.